The Hornets avoid a blowout to the Lakers. They still lose, though. The bigger loss is LaMelo Ball leaving this game with an ankle sprain. What does it mean for LaMelo? What does it mean for the Hornets? We'll get to it all today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available where you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see Doug Branson in despair, understandably so. Doug Branson's Substack can be found on everyhornetsboxscore.com. There you can text him as well. His information is there. Also listen to him on Locked On NBA. Doug is also, because he's a Renaissance man, he is writing the Locked On Hornets newsletter, the daily new Locked On Hornets newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now. LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them as always. Super Bowl 59, it's here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5. If you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Finally, I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Okay, well, the Hornets avoid a blowout. Mark Williams allowing Anthony Davis to score 20 points in the first quarter was absolutely going to be the A block. And then LaMelo goes down with injury, and LaMelo injury, that's going to be the leading topic because it's something that's happened before, and here it is happening again. So LaMelo Ball leaves after a shot. This was in the second quarter. Is that correct? I forget, it was second or third. Second quarter. He's backing up. He's backpedaling after the shot. He's holding his follow through, and then he steps on the foot of Jared Vanderbilt, who's kind of leaking out, about to go to the corner, and then he falls down. He leaves with an ankle sprain. Doug, as soon as he leaves, they announce him out for the rest of the game. Like, there's no, hey, he's questionable. Immediately as he's gone, they tell you he is not going to return. Charles Lee talked about LaMelo's injury afterwards and said this: they're still doing some evaluations. He shot the ball, was backpedaling to get back on defense, stepped on a foot. We'll see what happens tomorrow when he comes in for treatment. But he did a great job of being in the locker room, engaging with the guys as they came off of the court. He would also go on to say that he was in good spirits. So I'm hoping that there are a few signs that let us know that this is not a serious ankle sprain, but an ankle sprain with LaMelo is always going to be at least some form of serious because it's happened so many times throughout his career. The other question is the ankle braces. Do they make a difference? And if they don't, we can throw that out the window. But that's also a storyline, as much as I hate it. This is all going to be a part of the storyline here for LaMelo Ball.
Well, the ankle braces thing is tough because we don't know what they've prevented.
Right.
You know, there might have been issues before that would have been ankle turns or ankle sprains that didn't become those. So it's tough. And I don't know if the ankle braces do anything to limit, if you do injure your ankle, if it does anything to limit the damage that can be done to that ankle. I'm not sure. I'll have to do some further research on ankle braces.
But I think research on scapholunate ligaments as well while you're at it, just to let us know what Brandon's status is? That'd be great.
Every time you say scapholunate, I think it's like some cartoon word, like it's something out of Looney Tunes. Like it doesn't, whoever made that word, funny guy.
Feels like Dr. Seuss needed a word to rhyme with something and created scapholunate.
Exactly.
A walk into my pocket, that sort of thing. All right, go.
Okay.
Give me your take.
Encouraging signs, I would say he got up immediately to try to intentionally foul, which they called it a take foul. Come on. Like, I mean, the guy was injured, needed to stop so he could get off the floor. Like, refs, give me a break. But he is limping around. He couldn't put much pressure on it. But after just a few seconds, he was able to put a little bit of pressure on it and walk off on his own power, right?
Yeah.
So if he had to be helped off the floor, I'd be coming on here super worried. But obviously the history is the thing here, right? So he sprained that left ankle in the preseason of 22-23. That was against the Wizards. And he re-injured it twice that season, costing him 24 of the first 27 games. He would return. he'd play 14 more, and then he would fracture his right ankle, which required surgery. And then he played the first 14 games of the 23-24 season before injuring his right ankle again. And then he tried to play, and it kept giving him trouble, so they just shut him down all of last year, or most of last year. So, yeah, I mean, there have been multiple injuries to both ankles, although I guess if you wanted to just really, like, grasp at straws, you could say another encouraging thing is that it wasn't the right ankle. I mean, that's the one he fractured. So if I'm going to pick an ankle, I only have two to pick from. Mm-hmm. I guess I would pick the one that he's only sprained before and not the one that he's fractured and has all kinds of, gizmos and screws and plates in. I don't know what all's in there, but there's a lot.
No, I'm with you on some of the encouraging signs here, though, and I get it. It's a LaMelo ankle injury. I know that the world-famous WFNZ text line is going to be angry and they're going to give you all the takes. They're going to tell you to move on from them. They're going to tell you this is it, and they're going to tell you that this spells doomsday for the Hornets. It sucks. Like, all these injuries suck, especially when you're talking about your third best player, your second best player, and now your first best player again with LaMelo, who's missed some time with some injury management sort of thing, but the ankle injury is always going to be worrisome. At the same time, you're right. He wasn't helped off. It did seem like I believe the good spirit stuff. He was walking off on his own power. It didn't seem to be too strong of a limp. But who knows, man? Like, I'm not behind the x-rays. I'm not evaluating the ankle.
We're on limp watch. We've moved from braces watch to limp watch.
This is the only thing we can do. This is what we can do within our power. Watch the limp. Watch how the ankle braces affect. We can't even watch the ankle braces in action. Like, we just have to know that they're there, and hopefully they're doing their job, whatever that job is. What this means for the Hornets is, man, this team struggles without their primary ball handler. I think not having LaMelo out there, who is a force multiplier offensively, like the fact that he's not going to be out there is going to suck for everybody involved. Not only do you not have LaMelo, you're not going to have Brandon, depending on how much time LaMelo misses, but let's just call it a week. Let's call it 2 weeks. The reevaluating in 2 weeks thing. Oh God, that's not, I'm not going to like seeing that from Hornets PR, but let's just call it a little bit of time that LaMelo misses. Well, now you're leaning more on Nick Smith Jr., who's actually facilitating a little more. Vasa Micic, we know how that's gone this year. Not great. We got Isaiah Wong in there again. He's starting to pick up some minutes. Got some last night. Some like Cody Martin, Josh Green. Like, Doug, I'm throwing a lot of names out here. KJ Simpson, I'm throwing out a lot of names that are way too young, maybe not ready. Combo guards, aren't primary ball handlers. You don't even have Trey Mann. Of course, the player going down is a big deal because it's LaMelo, but also because it's a position where you don't have a lot of depth to serve that specific role in creating for other players. And it's going to be a rough offense. It's going to be a rough watch.
Yeah, he makes Mark Williams look a lot better on offense than some of these other options. Like, Mark needs to be facilitated too. There are a lot of guys on this team that need to be facilitated too. It'd be a nice time for Trey Mann to suddenly get healthy. Although we got an update a few games ago, pregame from Charles Lee that did not sound very encouraging. That they hoped he would be farther along than he was on that road trip, and then coming back home, the progress just doesn't seem to be happening at the rate that they wanted to. That Trey Mann wants it to. Mm-hmm. So I don't have much hope for that. I did like Vasa Micic. Like, as soon as LaMelo got hurt, he started looking like prime kid. Like, this guy just wants minutes, and as soon as he's getting minutes, he's like, all right, here we go. I'm going to find a new gear. Like, oh my God, Vasa, that guy frustrates me more than any recent Hornets player or Bobcats player that I can think of. The fact that he just really tones it down when he's not getting the minutes that he wants, and then ramps things back up when he knows it's time.
I don't know how rampant that is throughout the league, but I can think of two other players that would always tell you, at least, they would perform better with minutes. Remember Terry Rozier, when he comes over to Charlotte, everybody would say, look at his numbers as a starter. They're much better than when he comes off of the bench. And sure enough, Terry comes here and starts filling it up and, plays better than some of the other Hornets the last 5 years. And also Kelly Oubre. Remember Kelly was just saying, start me, baby. Give me all the minutes and I'll perform for you. So Vasa Micic is now the next player to that list.
Yeah, but Kelly would also perform as a bench player. Like, he didn't have to start to put up numbers. I'm sure he wanted to start. He made that desire known. But he also performed. I think Kelly performed well off the bench. Vasa has been apocalyptic off the bench.
Right. He's not.
And Terry Rozier was earning enough money from the Hornets and had been to a finals. He had some credentials that you could go. That deserves. Vasa doesn't. No, Vasa should be still earning his way into the NBA, and instead, anyway, don't get me off on a Vasa rant.
Oh yeah, I did not even mean to. I apologize. That was not to indicate that he was as impactful as Kelly Oubre or Terry Rozier in a Hornets uniform. Just saying the whole more minutes argument. It's funny. It's like, hey, I've been bad, but you give me more opportunity, then I'll be good. It's a funny notion for some of these players, and Vasa, I guess, in that way is added to the list. But you're right. Like, you're going to have to depend on him now because LaMelo goes down. Guess who plays over 30 minutes? Vasa. Vasa plays 33 minutes in this game. Like, it's so, as someone who everyone wants to get rid of in Micic for pennies on the dollar, right? Just whatever, drop him. That's how people are feeling right now. Now, realistically, in terms of playmaking for others, he probably is your best passer that is available. I think Trey Mann has some of those chops to his game. Nick Smith Jr. is looking a lot better in that regard. He's made quite a few plays for people. I really like what I've seen from him there. 6 assists last night against the Lakers. Yeah, that was awesome to see. Only 1 turnover for NSJ, too. So he's coming along. But
that's great.
Yeah. Anyways. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We'll dive a little more into this game, maybe give you some more observations from the backup ball handlers, Mark Williams, disaster of a game, Moussa Diabate coming in, Miles Bridges, all of it. We'll give you all the observations coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. It doesn't matter how many times I say it, it still hits me the wrong way. I'm old as hell. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long, and you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. You can feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, too, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, yeah, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Final LaMelo thoughts before we move on here, Doug, and talk a little about why they lost this game and what happened in the first and the second half.
Oh, you were asking me if I had it.
I was asking. I did say that as a statement. There was a period instead of a question mark at the end of that. I understand, but I didn't know if you had any final thoughts.
I interpreted it as a
on.
comma, and I thought there was going to be what is it, like a clause or something after the comma.
Whereas, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Well, we just talked about Vasa, and you mentioned NSJ right there at the end, but going to be some important minutes for NSJ, and he's going to probably be asked to do more ball handling duties, particularly with the bench unit. So looking for big things. He probably saves himself from being traded. Like, I don't see them trading NSJ. I don't see them being able to trade Vasa, but I wonder if they do, in the trade machinations, not necessarily go after a backup ball handler, but if that becomes like, ooh, you have one of those, go ahead and throw that in there too, and we'll call it a deal. Like, if that becomes more of a priority than some of the other positions, that's what I would say. But until we get more information on LaMelo, it's tough to make any kind of take. I mean, I'm comfortable with him not playing again until he's 100% healthy. If that means after the All-Star break or whatever, there is literally no reason to play him at anything less than 100% for the rest of the season.
I totally agree. And look, I don't like going all in on the tank. And I'm still not going all in on the tank. But the Hornets are still tanking in some sort of fashion, right? If they were in a playoff race, you would not see the injury management designations for some of these players going into a particular contest. At the same time, we just had a segment yesterday on Wes and Walker, the Hornets having won 5 of their last 8 games. They had the 3-game winning streak. You look at the standings now, they're kind of in a jumble with some of these other teams that are looking to tank for Cooper Flagg, who looked excellent last night, and you see some of these other prospects. They're going to be potentially maybe like the 6th worst team in the NBA. Now, we've talked about this every draft the last couple of years. The odds are so as to where you don't have a dramatic increase in number one chances, the worst team that you are, right? The worst that you are. That's not necessarily the case anymore. So it's not like I'm going all in on the tank. But just to put it simply, would I rather have a 12.5% chance at Cooper or a 9% chance at Cooper? I would rather have the 12.5% chance at Cooper Flagg. At the same time, I'm not willing to sacrifice egregiously so the winning culture and the good habits that are trying to be built here at the Spectrum Center.
I do have one more thought, because someone in the Every Hornets Box Score chat asked what we were supposed to do with all of these injuries, and I genuinely have no good answer. I mean, they replaced the entire training staff. They reformed the training staff. They made it something better. They hired a bunch of people with PhDs and master's degrees, and they hired more people to work on the training staff, and all of that's great. But there's no one that you can hire that's going to be able to prevent LaMelo backpedaling and stepping on someone's foot. I don't even think that's a LaMelo thing and his ankles being made of glass or something. You know, that's always the joke. I mean, guys step on foots and turn their ankles and have to miss games. That's just sort of part of the NBA. That's a dice roll thing. But teams win these wars of attrition by stacking talent. Teams survive this. Look at Oklahoma City has been without Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, both of their bigs that were supposed to be big factors in why they won basketball games. They've been without both of those guys for extended periods of time this season, and they've been able to stay on top. Dallas has had Kyrie and Luka out for weeks. They're not on top, but they're hanging around. I mean, teams deal with injuries because they just have talent on talent on talent. That's what the Charlotte Hornets are missing, not some like crazy magic doctor or priest that can come in and lift the curse. You know what lifts the curse? Getting more talent on this team.
LaMelo, speaking of adding people to the list, add Jared Vanderbilt to the list. He can be added to the list of LaMelo just freakishly so getting an ankle injury. So he steps on the foot of Jared Vanderbilt. There's an incident where he steps on the foot of somebody's, of a fan's foot, who's right there at the out of bounds line. And also PJ Washington, who gets a rebound and steps on LaMelo's foot. So it's happened 3 times. A fan, Jared Vanderbilt, and PJ Washington. Just weird happenstance type of stuff.
The one, and I think this was the fracture, but I'm not sure. There have been a lot of injuries, but there's the one where he just did the behind the back dribble.
That's the fracture. Yeah, it's the fracture. Yep.
So that is something where I go, okay, maybe there's something like wrong with the ankle structure, But I mean, stepping on a guy's foot, like that just happens.
He's had a lot of sprains, man. It's a lot. So many sprains. The big story of this game. Look, I texted you yesterday. The pendulum strongly in your side of the Mark Williams debate right now. I'm going to keep it real. Like, I believe in Mark Williams long term, but last night is not a game to point to. He was a disaster, Doug. Like, I'm going to keep it 100% real. Mark Williams, from the get-go, Anthony Davis took it right at him. And I think in the second quarter, Mark Williams responded and played better. I think in the third and fourth quarter, there was some diciness in terms of decision-making and pick-and-roll coverages. It was LeBron, who is one of the best decision-makers in NBA history, just putting Mark in a bind, putting whoever was on him in a bind, and that's how Anthony or even Hayes a couple of times was able to finish on some buckets there, and the offense for the Lakers was slowed down. But it's not like he wasn't even good in the second half. I just think there are some, I understand how that might come along a little bit later, just understanding where you're supposed to be. It's LeBron as a decision maker. First quarter, Anthony Davis was just taking you one-on-one and destroying you. Whether it was the mobility of Anthony Davis, whether it was AD going right at you with physicality, putting the ball on the deck, spinning, second chance points, 20 and 10. Look, it's Anthony Davis. The dude's a top 75 player of all time. He's a Hall of Famer. He's playing like a guy that's on the short list of Defensive Player of the Year award winners right now. It'll be like him, Wemby, Amin Thompson's getting a lot of love. AD is in that like top 3, top 5 list. at the same time, like, what are you supposed to do, man? That was terrible, Doug. So you take your victory lap. I'll have some, but you can take your victory lap today because you deserve it, man. Like that was a terrible, terrible performance from Mark, and it really sucked watching that happen in the first quarter specifically.
It did, and I'm not going to take any kind of victory lap. I don't take any pleasure in this. I want the Hornets to have a legitimate center that other teams don't have a scouting report on that says push this guy around because he'll let you. And look, to Mark's credit, he did at least admit after the game. He said this.
He did.
Quote, "We didn't have the physicality to start the game that we needed. We didn't throw the first punch. That starts with me not letting AD get into a flow." So, he admitted it. At least he has some sort of, introspection that he can understand that that's what happened instead of just coming out and, with the ego front and center. But there was a play, 141 left in the first quarter, where AD just literally shoved him out of the way and got the rebound. And I just wrote, have some pride. At some point you have, particularly after getting scored on like he did, you would think that a guy would respond to that by saying, all right, I got to hit this guy. I got to move this guy around. I got to go at him. Miles had that mentality. I thought particularly at the beginning of the second quarter, Miles was like, all right, I'm fed up with this. I'm going to the rack and I'm going to make him stop me. And and he was, doing his best to push LeBron James around as well. And so there were guys that had that mentality. Mark, unfortunately, was not one of them. And yeah, it was extremely disappointing to see.
Oh yeah. And I do think, I will say this. I think in the second quarter, remember there's a long rest for Mark. They're playing Musa quite a bit, and Mark just needed to sit for a while. It was time, right? He needed to go to the bench. And it was almost, you need to think about what you did. He was in timeout for a little while. Second quarter, I thought played a lot better, was much more attentive, got in a defensive stance when AD would catch it on the free throw line or high post, actually battled a little bit. Second half, I think he battled. They come out, Doug, in the third quarter, you could see they're trying to get Mark going. So they give it to Mark at the free throw line. He dribbles, spins, misses a layup. Offensively, too, he was missing shots. It wasn't a good game for Mark, even offensively. I don't think we're hurt as much by the missed shots, even though it sucks. What we're really angry about is the defense. But they try to get Mark going offensively, and he missed some shots there. There's still some plays that were a problem for him, but it wasn't like the first quarter. Thank God. The bar, again, it's on the ground in terms of you could play better than what you gave up in the first quarter. But it still wasn't very good for Mark. Just a bad game for him. Bad.
Well, Lakers, they got into that mode that Cleveland got into with the Hornets at the beginning of the month where they started playing with their food a little bit after they went up 20 points in the first quarter. AD and LeBron took the second quarter completely off. They just wanted to see if the Hornets were going to lay down, and they did not. And that's thanks to Miles. That's thanks to NSJ. A little bit of Vasa thrown in there after LaMelo goes out, and then Josh Okogie. To me, was other than I think Miles and Okogie 1-2 game balls for getting the Hornets back into this game. But sticking with Mark for just a second here. Offensively, the reason he's missing shots, well, there's two reasons. One, he's getting pushed away from the basket far enough that it's out of his comfort zone. That's number one. Number two, he's not getting position, and I would say sometimes he's not able to get position. That's concerning. Number two is there was one thing that I complimented Mark on early in the few games that we saw from him early in his career. I'm like, man, this guy really doesn't get bothered when he gets the catch close to the rim. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't get happy feet. That's happening. He's getting happy feet under the basket and making weird moves. And I don't know if the injuries, if some of the physicality that he's faced, I hate to say confidence issues, but I'm feeling a little bit of confidence issues. And then the final thing is that in the third quarter, Miles Bridges hits the three. AD, I think, was contesting it. And AD starts to run back. Miles starts to backpedal. He is begging for someone to run back on the floor because he's got to pick up LeBron in transition and make sure LeBron doesn't go coast to coast because that's his job. He's begging someone, and Mark super late to get back down the floor and has to foul AD. So it's just that kind of stuff where you're going,
yeah,
come on, man.
I saw that play. That play, it's like you would like somebody else that's a lot closer to AD to just go ahead and pick up the open man behind Miles, or maybe Miles goes on AD and then calls for somebody else to get LeBron, because Mark is literally the furthest from the ball and AD's on a leak out. So AD, as soon as he contests, he goes by Miles on the missed three, and then AD's already at half court. So it's like, hey, somebody else, this used to drive me crazy too, right? When somebody says, hey, come get your man, it's like, dog, I'm 40 feet away. Somebody else has got to get him until I can catch up. And then Mark catches up finally. Because what do you want him to do? Get on Heelys and then just roll down there faster than everybody? Like, he eventually got that. So, right. So somebody get the rollerblades out. No, but that did happen, and Miles was frustrated. I get it. But God almighty, like, so, hey, other people have to come in, stop ball, and then Miles take care of AD, or somebody else that's closer to AD just sprint, because it's not a cherry pick. Mark did this a couple times against Memphis. He leaked out, got a couple of easy and one opportunities against the Grizzlies because he was contesting a three, and then he leaks out. Same thing happens with AD. So that was the frustrating part there. Mark Williams, rough game. I think like that first quarter, as we've talked about him, and of course he's getting bullied by other players. It's the question that I think we have is how much we should believe in him. That was the worst. That was the worst game I've seen from him. I think that one was it.
Final thought, again, going back to every Hornets box score in the chat, my guy Keith, a longtime supporter, and he wants to believe desperately in Mark Williams, and he's pointing out, hey, Mark has not played 82 games yet. Like, what would be a full season for an NBA player? But my thing is, he's spent multiple years now practicing with an NBA team. He knows the game better than someone that played all 82 in their rookie season. And if he doesn't start to play better, he might not play 82 games. Like, he might, he might not start. He might not start anymore, at least. Like this, he's got to play better. There's not a games played excuse. Like, he's got to play. He doesn't have to play perfect. I don't think I'm looking for perfection. Got to play better than that.
That's where we differ, though, because I think it's misleading to say he's practiced when he's had back issues and a foot issue that has not allowed him to practice. So, like, he quite literally has not been on the floor. So I think that's where you're right. He's been in a training regimen, and he's bigger. And honestly, I don't know if putting all that weight on him. Like, I get we want him to be stronger down low, but guess what? His rookie year, like, remember how he was actually hanging around with perimeter offensive players on some pick and roll like hedges and then dropping really quickly? He seemed more athletic. He seemed to move a little better. And with a back injury, with a foot injury, putting on more weight, you talk about a concoction to make sure that you lose some of your mobility, a back injury, a foot injury, and putting on weight. Yeah, you're going to lose some mobility, and you can see it. You can see it, which is frustrating. All right, let's talk about Okogie coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Speed's everywhere!
Josh Okogie looks awesome, man. In this world where we're trying to figure out what defenders the Hornets want to keep and what defenders do the Hornets want to trade away, Okogie is making a strong case to stick around here in the Queen City. We'll get to that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Hornets. We can rummage through the Sicko Satchel in just a moment, but Doug, we've seen some of the reports. The Stein line, I believe, is one that Mark Stein talked about at first. As soon as the Hornets acquired Okogie, there were some reports / rumors that the Hornets weren't done with specifically Okogie, that they might move on from him and try to parlay him into a couple of other second rounders because this team likes to hoard the second rounders. Like, I felt the Hornets weren't done before the trade deadline, but not specifically as it pertains to Okogie. Like, I think you could just take your pick. Really, this might even be just a wing perimeter defender tryout session before we get to the deadline. Josh Green, Cody Martin, Josh Okogie. Hey, who plays better? Whoever plays better, I guess we could either flip you for the most assets, or we'll want to keep you around because you've played so well. Okogie is leading that charge. I think Josh Green has shown you some nice things here too lately. Cody Martin would be third on that list, in my opinion, as it stands right now. But and it's really just the shooting for Green. Like, Green has shown you more shooting than Okogie usually does, even though Okogie went 3 of 6 last night against the Lakers, which is great. But, oh my God, like this guy was an absolute menace in passing lanes. Eric Collins was so excited to see the hands that Okogie brings, just making life really hard on his assignment. A crossover, there's an Okogie hand. He's right up in your face. He's really strong. He's got good size to get up under you and also just become a fire hydrant, not let you move a little bit, and getting in the passing lanes, getting in your dribble lane. Okogie offensively too, just getting out in transition and hitting a couple shots that way, scoring 19 points. 4 steals. Can't say enough about the game from Okogie, and he became a favorite of Hornets fans last night.
4 steals. I think they missed a steal. I really think he had 5 steals.
Felt like
and
it.
They didn't credit. Yeah, I mean, because he had a lot of deflections that maybe he didn't get credited for the steal. Someone else did. And the turnovers for the Lakers, part of the reason the Hornets were able to get back into this game, the other part is that they shot the ball well from 3 as a team. They were, I think, almost at 39% as a team. And you have Josh Okogie going 3 of 6. You have Josh Green going 4 of 6. Which countered Miles, who did a lot of great things. I'm not really taking anything away from him, but he was 2 of 11 from 3. He wasn't shooting the ball well, but he did so many other things, getting to the basket well and defending, that it's fine. He finished with 26, 8, and 4. Okogie 19, 2, and 2. But him and Josh Green, they give you some different skill sets that help you as a team, because Green, you mentioned the corner 3-point shooting. He's money there. Josh Okogie can finish in transition. Josh struggles a little bit to finish in transition sometimes. So, yeah, man, I've loved what I've seen out of Okogie. Super energy. And he was not, like, he would get the steal and then fire the rest of the team up. Like, he was, like, inspiring them to play defense. So, yeah, man, I would be uncomfortable if they moved on from Josh Okogie. I would be confused if they moved on from Josh Okogie, because he seems to represent everything that they want to build here in Charlotte, the kind of attitude that they want to build. But it also did seem like both Josh Okogie and Miles Bridges were like auditioning to get traded to LA, because, by the way, LA needs a couple of things. They need a center. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to get the one that they want, which is Walker Kessler in Utah, but they also need wing defenders, and Josh Okogie is that. And they've got a first-round pick, and maybe if they miss on getting Kessler, that first-round pick suddenly becomes available to a team that wants to give up a wing defender, and the Hornets have a few. So I would just keep an eye on that, and Bridges too. I mean, there's options aplenty for the Hornets in terms of wing defenders. And if there's a first-round pick on the table, okay, well, then I get a little less uncomfortable by it.
And just to give some love to Josh Green, who has taken a lot of hate this year, and there's been time you can't come up with goose eggs as consistently as you did in some of these stretches, especially early on. But the man is in double digits the last 3 games, 14, 13, 15 against the Trailblazers, Pelicans, Lakers. He's actually shooting 50% or above from 3 in the last 4 games that he's played. He's shooting 39% from 3 on about 4 attempts per game this month. In the month of January, he's shooting about 39% from 3. So if you care about shooting, especially on a team that has struggled to shoot, maybe in part because of Josh Green a little earlier, but also the corner 3 is something Josh Green is really good at, and that's something that the Hornets have particularly lacked the last couple of years. I know it might just be second nature for people to say, hey, let's move off of Josh. He's been so underwhelming. I would say he's actually helping you a little bit more in the last month, especially defensively. I do think the intensity is there from him. I'd never have an effort question with Green. And Okogie defensively is great. I just don't expect the shooting to be there. I think we have enough of a sample size for Okogie. But those would be the guys that I choose, right? If you're picking who the odd man out is, it's Cody. It's Cody Martin, who has an injury history and isn't as effective as those other 2 right now.
By the way, this game was close. Like, the Hornets had a chance to win this game. The Hornets, the refs missed a few calls that should have gone LA's way. If the Hornets had managed to miraculously win this game, LA would have had good cause to be upset, although they wasted their challenges too early and didn't have them when the ball clearly went off Mark Williams with 24 seconds to go. That should have been LA's ball. And then they reviewed it, and I was like, wait a minute, they can't review. What are they reviewing? And they were reviewing the shot clock, which is funny because the referee goes on the microphone, and you could tell he saw the footage and knew that he blew the call. Like it wasn't like, oh, that could kind of go either way. No, it was obviously off of Mark, and the guy, his voice sounded, I've known that voice of being like, I know I'm wrong. I can't say that I'm wrong. But here's why we reviewed this, and let's just move on from the whole thing. So anyway, but they had a shot there, and Josh gets fouled on the 3-point attempt by AD, makes all of his free throws. Good clutch free throws from Josh Green. But then AD hits his free throws to seal the game. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun game. It was on local TV. I'm glad in the Hornets, every Hornets box score write-up I wrote that the local TV channel should just change to a rerun of CSI, because at least that'd be a more entertaining crime scene. But the Hornets managed to pull things out, and I think put an entertaining product in front of more fans.
Well, the classic joke was, what Olivia said to me as we were watching about midway through the second quarter, and she said, "They're showing this over The Bachelor?" When I was like, yeah, they are. Now, don't worry. You could still watch The Bachelor if you want to. But yes, they were showing it instead of The Bachelor. And I'm glad they fought, right? And I always think about Nada when I think about us getting excited for nationally televised games for the Hornets. I just remember him asking, why? It's like, yeah, they're going to be on ESPN. It's going to be cool. Why? Do you want them to get embarrassed? Do you like that broadcast crew, particularly more so than Eric Collins and Del Curry? Why? Sure enough, they would get beat by 30 that game. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be careful what I wish for. I'm glad that they made this a game. We got time maybe for one Sicko Satchel question. Let's get to it real quickly before we end the show today. What you got, Doug?
Oh, boy. All right, let me track back. I will say while I'm looking for this that...
I can ask it if you want me to, by the way.
Well, I would just say that Josh Okogie was definitely saying, can I steal you for a second, multiple times in this game. There's a joke for the Bachelor fans out there.
Yeah. Can I grab you for a chat? Right.
Yeah. Sean, I wish Mark Williams would show some of the level of physicality that some of these Bachelor contestants are showing to try to get in front of the Bachelor.
Yeah,
anyway.
But they're always gone. Anybody that shows that, they always leave. It's the guys that, come around at the end that eventually are awarded the final rose. I'm just saying, the physicality guys in the Bachelor, they always leave. They always get kicked off.
All right, Sean of the 5th Book Night Division asks, could you see the organization currently planning on tanking next year as well? It's just as strong of a draft, if not better, than 2025. Yeah, Cameron Boozer is like the 2nd overall pick, son of Carlos Boozer. He looks really good in some of the high school tape. And then AJ Dibansa is the number 1 overall consensus pick.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you much about the 25 class. Are the Hornets going to tank?
I just told you everything I know.
Again, I know. Yeah. I think Boozer has a twin. I think that's the last piece of info that I would give you. I think the twins, Boozer, twins. I would tell you that I would be in a lot of pain if the Hornets decide to do this again for another year going into next season, and then we go to January and we barely have 10 wins. At most we have like 12, 13, 14. I don't think it's going to be on purpose, Doug. You can't do this again. Not on purpose. The only way that actually, if this thing goes and falls off of a cliff, how that will happen is the players aren't meshing well enough with one another, and you're going to blow it up. You have injuries, and the Hornets decide to blow it up. In the case of making big changes, not that they trade every single player on the roster, but that they make big changes. So if that's the case, then okay, maybe they tank with just a different group of players. So maybe that's the case here, but I don't think that they're going to rest LaMelo, injury management for Mark and Brandon Miller and all that. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm hoping that it doesn't happen more so than I can advise you that it won't.
Yeah, what you're watching now wasn't intentional insofar as there was some major plot for all of these unfortunate injuries.
It wasn't planned, maybe? Is that what we can say?
Well,
it wasn't planned?
Well, that's why I laughed, because it is intentional in that they have not gone out and gotten the requisite talent that would say, all right, the Hornets are ready to, the expectation is to make the playoffs. There were no playoff expectations. So really, I think the better question is, in the media day next offseason, will they come out and say our expectations this year is to make the playoffs? I don't think so. I think the plans are longer term than that. I think Now, 2 seasons from now, do I think that's the aim? Probably. We'll have to do an innings check with Schlotkin to see what inning we're in, but I don't think we're going to be in the bottom of the 9th come next offseason. So, to me, tanking is one of 2 scenarios. One, you've got a lot of NBA level talent. You had playoff expectations. You decided, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. We break it all down at the trade deadline and get way worse. Or you were already super bad to begin with, and you just stay super bad. The Hornets are kind of in a weird middle ground where they've got players that they're trying to develop. They don't want to be super, super bad right off the jump, but they also don't have the requisite NBA talent where anyone would look at them and go, yeah, that's definitely going to be a playoff team. So they're trying to overachieve. I think they'll be in the same position this next offseason that they were this past offseason, which is like, we got some talent, we're still developing, we hope to overachieve.
I think there'll be a hipster pick if you think they land Cooper Flag, and now you're talking about a lineup of LaMelo, Brandon, Cooper, Miles, Mark. Miles being the most tradable of any of those players, and then you bring in, maybe do you sacrifice Miles for depth? Do you bring in, instead of having Miles at the 4, do you bring in a different starter and a 6th man that you feel a little better about with somebody that can shoot a little more? But that starting lineup, there's a lot of things you can do. There's not going to be anybody shorter than 6'7", 6'8" across that whole entire lineup, which would be ridiculous and fun. So there'll be a hipster pick if they get Cooper. I just don't know enough about Harper and Bailey and Edgecombe right now. So we'll see how people react to them if they're the choice. But I know a lot about Cooper.
We're getting Nada on the show pretty soon. He said February is going to be the month for him to do a couple of hits on the show, so he can let us know about all of these guys.
All right. Well, we can ask him about some of those college guys. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, Locked On NBA. Find him on Blue Sky. I had my first Blue Sky post. Charlotte Sports Despair asked me a question, and it was the first time I commented. So I'm a part of the people now. I'm going to Blue Sky. I got at least have my account up and running. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. I'm also on Twitter at Walker Mail. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.